So my business is a coaching and therapy business for LGBTQ plus women who want to live with more passion, pride and purpose, to be able to help them to step into their power and not feel afraid through debilitating emotions or anxiety. So the majority of my clients, they are running real high patterns of anxiety and real patterns of self-sabotage, low self-esteem, low self-worth, a fear. Everything that they experience is underlined by fear. And these patterns are keeping them stuck. These patterns are not allowing them to feel that they can take their space up in the world. These patterns are not allowing them to be who they want to be, establish a sense of identity, and just be happy and be free. And many clients will come to me with layers and layers of self-doubt, layers of self-sabotage, and as a result, they almost just become ingrained in their ways of thinking and their ways of being. So a lot of my clients will come to me and they will say, I want more confidence, or I want more of this, or I want more of that. And I say, well, you don't need any more of that because it's already within you. And they look at me really confused, and I say to them that the authentic you, the happy you, the confident you is already there, but all you need to do is remove the self-doubt. That's all you need to do, is peel back the layers of the self-doubt, the self-sabotage, and all the layers of life that you've allowed to weigh you down. And once you remove that, it's almost like peeling back all the layers and just revealing the true person underneath all of that. And so when they start to get that concept, they understand that they're more in control than they ever thought they would be, to be able to have that transformation. So what I always say to my clients is that when you develop an unshakable confidence in who you are as a person, then it doesn't matter what happens outside of you. People and circumstances are always subject to change. And when you're looking for happiness outside of you, then you're always going to be disappointed. The one thing that we can always control is ourselves and our own emotional state. And when you learn to do that, then it doesn't matter what happens outside of you, because you can choose to be happy regardless of what anyone else thinks. And a lot of clients, when they experience the realization that they are in control of their own happiness and their own emotional state, and that they have a lot more control on who they are and how they're being, then that's when they experience the true transformation. So growing up was pretty hard for me because I knew from a really early age that I was different. And I discovered that when I was about 11, I was gay. And so that was a secret that I sat on for up until I was 18 years old. And it was something that I buried and tried to bury and tried to forget. But as I got older, it became more prominent as I was looking at my peers, and they were starting to have boyfriends and develop their own sense of identity. And I just felt like I was trailing behind. So I felt very isolated and quite alone in the world. So I think that I found my childhood quite difficult because of that reason, because I grew up in born in 1980, grew up in 1990, went through school in the 90s. And at that particular time, it was really not okay to be gay. It wasn't okay to express yourself outside of the societal norms. So I found that really, really hard. And so I didn't have a great relationship with my mum or dad growing up. I felt very different to my sisters. And incidentally, I've got a twin sister, so we are completely different. So they would wear dresses and do all the typical girly things. And I was just freestyling, doing my own thing. And I don't think my parents knew what to do with me. So my relationship was quite frayed. I didn't have a massive connection with them. So I found myself quite lonely and just trying to make my way in the world in the best way that I knew. But I found that outside of my family, where I found it very difficult to be myself, because my upbringing was actually quite strict. I come from an Irish Catholic family, I got sent to a convent school. I was educated by nuns. It was a very rigid way of being, and with high expectations for school and academia. So when I was growing up, as you know, I was very, very different, and I knew that I was gay from an early age, and I'd sat on that, and I knew that at some point I was going to have to come out. The flower was going to have to bloom. And so I had a colleague or a boss in my part-time job. I was a fitness instructor when I was only very young. So she recognised that I was gay, and I think she recognised that I was really struggling. So I'll be forever grateful to her. She's still a fantastic friend now. She decided to take me under her wing, and I knew I was going to have to come out. The whole reason why, she said to me before she took me out, "Leanne, come on now, let's go out on such and such a day." I can't even remember, it was over 20 years ago. "And we'll go for a drink, and you can tell me what you need to tell me." So we still laugh about it now, where she said, I haven't eaten, so before we go for a drink, I just need to dive into McDonald's and get something to eat. So I'm sat there. I was only 16 or 17 at the time, poised and ready to just do this big fanfare announcement. And she bites into a Big Mac, and I said to her, "I'm gay." And she started chewing. And I was expecting her to just give me this real sermon about, "Oh, wow, isn't that amazing, you've come out." But she was chewing forever. And I was sat there going bright red thinking, are you going to say anything? I'm gay. Like, where's the balloons? Where's the party poppers? And so that was it. You know, that was the very first time that I said to someone, "I'm gay." And actually from there, it was quite an easy process. So I started to tell various people, various friends. And my mother was really interesting, because she tried to be okay with it initially, and actually she wasn't okay with it for a number of years. I got kicked out when I was 17, and yeah, my family just couldn't cope with the fact that I was really different, and so yeah, I got hoofed out, and it was a very, very difficult period of time for me, because not only at the same time did I lose a roof over my head, I also lost a job as well. I got made redundant very quickly. And so that period of time in my life was just so uncertain, and I just went into a heap. I didn't realise how low I was going to get at the time, but I remember being on the phone to the bank begging them for money, had to just give me some money to help me out, and I was penniless. I didn't know how I was going to eat at one point, and that was really, really difficult. But I'm actually really blessed. I did have some friends in my life who dug me out, who lent me a sofa. But actually, at that particular time, when I knew I had no job and I had no roof over my head, and I had things to pay, bills coming out of my account, but no way of paying for them, I knew that the only person that was going to sort this out was me. And so that was like an ignition to have to really get a grip of myself really quickly, and take some immediate action with my life. So what I started to realise was that circumstances around me were always subject to change, and that includes people. But when you actually have an unshakable belief in yourself and your ability to turn a situation around, then that's when everything started to change for me. So I started to study people who had been successful. I started to look outside of me. There were no LGBTQ plus women as role models at the time. So I started to read personal development books, and I started to become really interested in psychology and how the mind worked. But also, I'm a really spiritual person. So I started to look at things from that angle as well, just to look at my entire existence and what it meant on this planet. Because I really just I always felt that there was more out there for me. And I just didn't want to sit and be a victim of circumstances, because I knew how bad that I was feeling as a result of things that were happening around me. I wasn't able to cope with it. I didn't have the internal resources to get a grip. I'd had some really negative romantic relationships that really made me question myself and why there was a pattern of people who treated me less than my worth coming into my life. And what I realised was that I was the person that was allowing that situation to take place. And I split from a partner a number of years ago, and that particular relationship, when that ended, it forced me to really go inside of myself and start to look at who I was. And actually, when I started to get honest with myself, I didn't like who I was. And I realised that I was running a pattern of internal self-sabotage. And I started to examine my thoughts. And it dawned on me that me having these patterns of self-sabotage and this self-loathing and me telling myself that I wasn't good enough over and over again was starting to play out in my life. And what I realised was that if I was having these thoughts throughout my day, I'm awake 15 hours a day. Now, if I'm having those thoughts 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, up until I was in my 30s, I'd been self-hypnotising myself to run these patterns, and no wonder my life was a complete mess. I started to learn that actually I was the problem, but I was also the solution. So what that enabled me to do was to start to carve a path for myself on how I was actually going to transform myself to be able to take control and transform my life. So that was the first stepping stone on my journey to personal transformation. So what I realised that in order to make a change in my life, that it had to start with me, and I knew that I had to change something, but I didn't know how. So I started to experiment with change. And so I decided that I wanted to change one thing. And I knew that if I could change one thing, then I could go on and change other things in my life. So I started with something really small and quite manageable, and that was my diet. And as a result of changing my diet, I lost 2.5 stone. And I started to eat healthier. I started to put nourishing food into my body. I started to train my body because I knew that if I was strong physically, then I'd be strong mentally. And I started to really reflect inwards. I started to meditate as well, and to actually make some time for myself and spend some healthy time on my own, rather than being a total consumer in the world and being swallowed up with the outside world. And it wasn't until I took that time away and just isolated myself for a short while to work on myself that I realised that actually I was capable of way more than I'd ever given myself credit. And from there I completed triathlons and marathons, and then I realised that everything inside of me was starting to change, and as a result my outer world and my outer circumstances were starting to transform as well. And so the relationship that I had with myself was starting to become more healthy, more balanced, and I started to realise that actually I didn't have to be scared anymore, and it didn't matter what people thought of me, so long as I had good self-esteem and I held myself in high regard, then other people would have that attitude towards me as well. But obviously it was a long journey to get to that point. Things are different now because I'm in a position, having had those hardships and troubled times, having had the difficult relationships, having had the difficult childhood, I'm now able to look back with a lot more empathy and forgiveness. And that's allowed me to be able to put myself in a position to help others, to help other LGBTQ+ women in my community who are struggling with patterns of self-sabotage, the feeling of not fitting in, which results in high anxiety and an inability to be happy. So in that respect, it's been a huge transformation for me, but also for me to allow others to experience a transformation, and for me to be an example to other people to know that they are capable of change as well, and that they're able to actually transform their own lives. Because I didn't think that change was possible. I thought that this was what I was served up and this was going to be me for the rest of my life. But actually, even though my past was very difficult and very troubled, I wouldn't change any of it, because it's enabled me to take the transformative steps to get to the place where I am now, and I wouldn't change a thing. So having Bodhi, for me, having my little brown dog called Bodhi, she's a little Patterdale Terrier. She's only 2 years old, and she's the absolute light of my life. And why do I love having her? I love her to pieces for her really unique personality. She's definitely not like other dogs. And I love the fact that I can get out into nature with her. So I love exploring beaches, coastlines. I love to surf. I love to be able to just be at one in nature, just to know that it's just me and her. And a lot of the time when I'm out in nature, that's when I'm able to have some of my best ideas about how I'm going to improve things for my clients, but also work on myself as well, and have that time to mentally download and use it as walk-in meditation, or just to breathe some fresh air and just to be me without any distractions, just me and my dog being able to connect with the world. So what made me start coaching, and what made me start coaching in therapy? Well, it was a natural progression for me, because I have always had a real empathy and compassion for other people. And I think that I've developed that sense of compassion and empathy because of the hardships that I faced in my life. I know what it's like to be homeless. I know what it's like to be penniless. I know what it's like to be unemployed. I know what it feels like to be completely hopeless. And those feelings that I've experienced at the time, they were a hardship for me, because I didn't know what they meant moving forward. I always think that life is a journey, and everything makes sense when you look backwards. And so for me, those experiences have allowed me to develop a real sense of emotional acuity, to be able to help people and to be able to spot patterns and problems within my clients. So I've got a bit of an old head on my shoulders. I've always had that ever since I was a child, because I've always felt different. So I've always looked at the world very differently, and always had a different perception to everybody else. So because of that, I have been able to develop a sense of emotional awareness. And when you have that, you're able to help people become free of themselves. And so I've always found that people have always naturally gravitated towards me. I've always been a big problem solver. I've always been a great listener. I've always been able to help people who are struggling by just listening to what the issues are and looking at things from an alternative perspective, because I've had that different perspective. I've had those lived experiences. So one thing that I always speak to my clients about, and I will always advocate, is that by being LGBTQ+, I get them to understand that their difference is their strength. Because when you are different and you grow up in a world that's less than accepting, then you learn to scan the world for emotional safety, and you learn to read people really quickly. You learn to have emotional acuity. You learn to be able to read body language, to make sure that somebody isn't going to give you a hard time. So those skills can set you apart from the rest of the world to be able to help others. And I always say that your difference is your superpower, and not just for LGBTQ+ people, but anyone from a minority group. Anyone can step into their power and realise that actually their difference is their power as they go through life, and that no, I don't want to be the same as the next person. I want to be different. I want to have my life, and I want to be able to have a spotlight shone on my life and be remembered for being me. I don't want to be remembered for fitting in and being like everybody else. And so when clients start to realise that their difference is their strength, then it means that they're able to actually carve their own life, be more authentic, be themselves, and realise that they have one life. We're not here for a very long time, and to make the most of what they've got, and the people around them, give them more love more freely, and give more of themselves. So some of the transformations that my clients have experienced have been in as little as 4 sessions with me, and those transformations are experiencing true mental freedom, true happiness, true confidence, without any limitations, without self-doubt, because I will work with them in a really detailed way to find out what patterns they're running to start with. And we'll start to examine the first time that they ever felt the way that they do, because essentially a lot of my clients have been exposed to situations and circumstances that have taught their brain how to be a certain way. So many clients will be running subconscious patterns of behaviour that will just be taking over their life. And once they start to realise what those belief patterns are that are keeping those behaviours in place, that's when they can start to experience the transformation that comes with being free. So for example, I specialise in helping clients, LGBTQ+ women who suffer with anxiety and low self-esteem, and who are living in fear of really being who they want to be. So some of the transformations that I've experienced are with women who are in their 50s, who've had 30 years of feeling like they can't take up their space in the world. I've had women who have tried all kinds of other therapy like CBT and psychotherapy that have failed, and they've come to me and we've started work together. And some clients have said for the first time ever they're walking taller, they're smiling, they never thought they'd smile again, and they're smiling. They've got the confidence to actually be who they want to be in the world and not be frightened to be who they are. So those are the types of transformations that my clients experience, and it's something that I really advocate in my group, in my Facebook group, because when clients work with me, what I get them to do is once they've had the transformation, they will go into the group and I will help them share their story so that it can be used to pay it forward, to be able to inspire others, other LGBTQ+ women, to know that change is possible, that you don't have to stay stuck. So I'll always say to my clients when they come and see me and they say to me that they've been in therapy for years, and I'll ask them the question, if you had a car and it had a problem, would you keep taking it back to the same garage over and over and over again to get fixed, and it's never fixed for years? And very often they'll say, no, I wouldn't. So I'll say, why are you doing this for years and years and years and you're not getting anywhere? And very often the penny drops that actually, sometimes when you want to make a change, you have to try something different. You have to have a different approach. So what I'll say to them is it's not me that's making the change, it's me that's facilitating somebody to change. If somebody wants to change and they're invested fully and committed in that change, then I can help them on that path. Very often, people will go and seek out a therapist and hope that they will wave a magic wand over them. But actually, true change starts within. And if clients aren't prepared to do that work, then they're not going to experience the change. But if clients are, and they bring their whole selves to the therapy and they're willing to actually embrace the entire process, then very often they will experience a change at some level. How drastic that will be dependent on their ability and their willingness to actually let go of certain problematic emotions that have been holding them back. So I always say to my clients that when you come and work with me, I'm the driving instructor, but I'm not doing the driving. If you want change, you are going to have to be a driver in this process and not a passenger. And so when people understand that they have to take responsibility and take the steps themselves to initiate the change, then that's when there's a true transformation, because then I'm helping them understand that they have way more control than they ever thought possible. So for me, it's absolutely magical to be able to facilitate and help people to experience a completely different reality to the one that they've been living in for years and years and years, to be able to know that there's actually a lot more in the world than what they think is ever possible for them, and to help them understand that they have the capacity themselves to reach their true potential. So just like I've experienced myself, that when you have that realization, then to know that you've helped somebody understand that anything is possible, I don't think that you can. I don't think I can articulate how that feels when you have people saying to you that they've actually never felt this way in their life, and it's almost like unlocking someone from a prison, helping them to just walk free. And I can't articulate how that feels. It's magical, it's off the scale. I feel blessed and I feel really privileged to be able to be, that people would trust me to be part of that journey to help them. So at the moment I run a Facebook group and it's called LGBTQ+ Anxiety Recovery, Confidence and Wellness Support Group on Facebook. So people can reach out to me in the group. I work with professional LGBTQ+ women who want to make a change in their life, who want to live with more passion, pride and purpose. So they're able to contact me through the group directly, where I run the group and I'll include lots of content for them to help them on their journey. And if they want to reach out to me for one-to-one support, then they're able to do so via the group. So why do I work with LGBTQ+ women? Because I've recognised there's a massive need for more support, more peer support, and actually more role models within the world who are not frightened to stand up and represent this community. And I know firsthand how it feels to run patterns of self-sabotage. I know what it feels like to be depressed and anxious and feel like I've got no one to speak to in my life. I know what that feels like. So I want to be able to bridge that gap in helping women who've suffered from discrimination, who suffer with negative self-talk, who aren't reaching their full potential, to be able to live a life of mental freedom. So I'm really passionate about serving the community that I'm from, and it's something I'm very proud to do. And I'm hoping that by people working with me directly, they see how confident and self-assured I am. So I want clients, when they come to see me, to understand that I have been where they've been, and actually change is completely possible, and that they don't have to do it alone, and actually there's someone there to represent them and to speak up for them and be a role model. So do I think people can change? Absolutely, I think people can change once they stop listening to the story that they keep telling themselves in their mind. And actually, it's something that I say to my clients on a regular basis, is that thoughts are like trains. They come and go on a platform all the time. And just because a thought train is passing doesn't mean that you actually have to get on board with it. Because when you get on board with a thought, it will take you somewhere. When you learn to step back on the platform, that's when you experience true mental freedom. Some of the changes that I'd like to see in the world are, I'd absolutely love to see people be free to be who they want to be, to dress how they want to dress, to not feel like they have to fit in and box themselves in within a societal norm. I'd absolutely love to see creative expression, to see kindness and more love and more encouragement, rather than competition and fighting and self-loathing and all the really hurtful and self-sabotaging emotions that come with restrictions and not living to your full potential. One bit of advice that I'd give to anyone who is struggling right now is that change is always possible, and it starts with perspective. Now, perspective can either keep you trapped in a prison or it can set you free, and it really is a choice which perspective or which angle that you're going to look at yourself, and change starts within. So that is the one bit of advice that I give to anybody who is looking to make a change with their life right now. And it's really simple, it doesn't have to be complicated. So many people out there think that change has to be a long, laborious process, but in actual fact, it all starts with your ability to look at things from a different angle.